Ladies and gentlemen, listen closely. We are living in an age where identity is blurred, truth is diluted, and calling is often buried beneath noise. Many women are searching for affirmation, striving to be seen, and trying to fit into systems that were never designed to hold them. But even in this generation of confusion, God has not stopped choosing. He is still raising up women who are not defined by trends, opinions, or applause, but by assignment. These are not flawless women. They are not the loudest, the most followed, or the most celebrated. They are women who have been set apart by heaven for a purpose that goes beyond visibility. A chosen woman carries something unseen. She walks with marks that cannot be photographed, tagged, or explained away. The world may overlook her, misunderstand her, or even label her strange, but heaven recognizes her immediately. When God places his hand on a woman for something significant, he rarely starts by elevating her. More often, he begins by separating her. And that separation can feel uncomfortable. It can feel lonely. It can feel confusing. Doors close without warning. Relationships shift without explanation. Familiar spaces begin to feel restrictive. But this is not abandonment. This is alignment. Divine separation is never punishment. It is preparation. God removes what cannot go where he is taking you. He disrupts comfort to develop capacity. He disturbs the familiar to awaken the eternal. When a woman is chosen, God refuses to leave her the same. He will not anoint what he plans to keep bound to the past. So her spirit begins to feel restless. Conversations that once satisfied her now feel shallow. Places that once energized her now feel draining. Even her thoughts begin to rise to a higher level. This is not instability. This is spiritual elevation. Scripture confirms this pattern again and again. Before God expanded Abraham, he instructed him to leave the land, the people, the identity that shaped him, because covenant demands movement and destiny requires release. You cannot hold on to comfort and carry calling at the same time. When God separates a woman, it is because he is preparing her to carry something sacred that not everyone is qualified to understand. When God marks a woman for something greater, he rarely begins by placing her in the spotlight. Instead, he begins by pulling her into the shadows, not to hide her, but to shape her, not to diminish her, but to deepen her. A chosen woman is often removed before she is revealed because what God plans to pour into her cannot survive the noise of the crowd. Heaven knows that intimacy always precedes influence. A chosen woman begins to notice that she no longer fits where she once belonged. Conversations that once felt natural now feel hollow. Relationships that once energized her now drain her spirit. Rooms that once welcomed her now feel uncomfortable. This isn't pride. This isn't rebellion. This is consecration at work. God is gently yet firmly loosening her grip on what no longer aligns with where he is taking her. Separation is not rejection. It is divine selection. God never removes a woman from spaces he still intends for her to occupy. If he's pulling you out, it's because the environment can no longer support what he's growing inside you. He isolates what he intends to activate. He removes what he intends to release with power. The chosen woman is not being pushed away from people. She is being pulled closer to purpose. This is where many women become confused. They assume loss means failure. They interpret isolation as abandonment. But heaven sees it differently. What feels like subtraction is actually preparation. God is reducing distraction so he can increase discernment. He is pruning connections so he can produce clarity. He is quieting external voices so his internal whisper can finally be heard. The chosen woman is consecrated before she is commissioned. Consecration is costly. It requires surrendering what feels familiar. It demands obedience when explanations are unavailable. It asks you to trust God's hand even when you don't understand his method. That's why this season feels uncomfortable. Growth always does. Scripture confirms this pattern repeatedly. Before God expanded Abraham, he separated him. Before Joseph was elevated, he was isolated. Before Moses could lead a nation, he spent decades alone in the wilderness. Before David wore a crown, he learned how to worship unseen. God has always worked this way. Separation precedes manifestation. The chosen woman experiences a holy discomfort. Her spirit becomes restless with surface level living. She no longer finds satisfaction in what once filled her. Not because those things were sinful, but because they are now insufficient. Her appetite has changed. Her hunger has deepened. Her soul craves more than routine faith. She wants intimacy, alignment, and truth. This is the moment when many women attempt to reconnect with old versions of themselves. They revisit familiar spaces, hoping to regain comfort. But comfort and calling rarely coexist. God doesn't allow her to return because the place she left can no longer hold the woman she is becoming. Growth makes old rooms feel small. Divine separation sharpens discernment. When fewer voices surround her, clarity increases. When distractions decrease, revelation flows. When people step away, God steps closer. In solitude, she learns to distinguish God's voice from her own emotions. In stillness, she recognizes conviction without confusion. This is not loneliness. This is sacred training. The chosen woman begins to understand that being set AP. Art doesn't make her better than others. It makes her responsible. Responsibility to guard her spirit. Responsibility to steward her calling. Responsibility to walk in obedience even when misunderstood. She realizes that consecration is not about restriction, it's about readiness. God removes her from certain circles not because they are evil, but because they are incompatible with where she is going. You cannot carry old attachments into new assignments. You cannot drag yesterday's identity into tomorrow's purpose. God separates what cannot survive the next level. This is why the chosen woman must resist the urge to mourn what God removes. Some exits are divine protection. Some endings are holy interruptions. Some closed doors are mercy in disguise. God knows what cannot go with you. And because he loves you, he refuses to allow excess baggage to delay destiny. Separation is not the end of your story. It is the foundation of it. What God is building in private will sustain you in public. What he removes now will protect you later. What feels uncomfortable today will become clarity tomorrow. You are not being isolated to be forgotten. You are being consecrated to be trusted. When God chooses a woman, one of the first marks he engraves upon her life is identity. Not the kind shaped by culture, applause, or affirmation, but an identity rooted in revelation. A chosen woman does not discover who she is by asking the world for permission. She receives her identity from heaven. And once it is established, nothing on earth can shake it. This identity is not loud. It does not need validation. It does not compete. It rests. A chosen woman carries herself with a quiet authority that cannot be imitated because it was forged in the secret place. She knows who she is, not because life has been easy, but because God has been faithful. Her confidence does not come from compliments. It comes from covenant. The enemy understands the power of identity. That's why he attacks it relentlessly. He doesn't always come with obvious temptation. Sometimes he comes with questions. Doubt disguised as curiosity, insecurity masked as realism. He whispers, "Are you really called? Did God really say?" Because if he can fracture identity, he can influence decisions. A woman who questions who she is will eventually question where she belongs. But a chosen woman learns early that her worth is not tied to performance. She is not valuable because of what she produces. She is valuable because of who she belongs to. Heaven does not measure her by her past mistakes, her present struggles, or her future fears. Heaven names her by promise. This identity is established before assignment. God does not first tell her what to do. He first tells her who she is. Just as Jesus stood at the Jordan River before performing a single miracle and heard the Father declare, "This is my beloved Son," the chosen woman is affirmed before she is activated. Identity always precedes instruction. Because of this, she becomes immovable. Circumstances may change, but her foundation does not. Seasons may shift, but her sense of self remains anchored. She is not tossed back and forth by opinions. She is not shaken by rejection. She does not crumble when misunderstood. Her identity is built on truth, not reaction. A woman with unshakable identity no longer lives to be accepted. She lives to be aligned. She stops shrinking to make others comfortable. She no longer apologizes for her growth. Transformation did not make her proud, it made her obedient. She understands that her evolution is evidence of God's work, not arrogance. This identity also reshapes how she relates to people. She no longer chases those who walk away. She blesses them and continues forward. She understands that not everyone who leaves is an enemy. Some exits are God's way of preserving peace. Some departures are divine pruning. Identity teaches her when to hold on and when to release. A chosen woman is not controlled by the fear of being disliked. She is governed by the desire to remain faithful. She understands that popularity and obedience rarely walk together. Approval from people is temporary. Approval from God is eternal. And once she tastes that kind of affirmation, she refuses to trade it for applause. This identity is reinforced in solitude. In quiet moments with God, she learns to see herself through his eyes. She learns that her scars do not disqualify her. They testify. Her failures do not define her. They refine her. What once embarrassed her now equips her to minister with compassion and authority. The chosen woman stops rehearsing who she used to be. She does not deny her past, but she does not live there. She honors the journey without becoming trapped by it. She knows that redemption rewrit stories. Grace renames what shame tried to label. Mercy speaks louder than memory. Her identity is not fragile. It is fortified by truth. When storms rise, she does not panic. When pressure increases, she does not collapse. When life becomes uncertain, she becomes still. She knows who she is. And more importantly, she knows who she is. This is why the chosen woman cannot be manipulated. Flattery does not move her. Threats do not intimidate her. Comparison does not distract her. She walks with clarity because she stands on conviction. Her identity is not up for negotiation. When a woman knows who she is in God, she stops chasing what she already carries. She stops striving for validation she already possesses. She stops proving what heaven has already approved. She is rooted, she is grounded, she is secure. And from that place of identity, everything else begins to align. One of the clearest marks that sets a chosen woman apart is discernment, not suspicion, not fear, but spiritual perception. Discernment is the God-given ability to see beneath the surface, to sense what others overlook, and to recognize truth even when it is wrapped in confusion. This is not a skill she learns overnight. It is a sensitivity that develops through intimacy, obedience, and time spent listening more than speaking. A chosen woman does not move by appearances alone. She understands that everything that looks good is not God, and everything that feels right is not aligned. She has learned that discernment is not about judging people, it is about guarding purpose. God trains her spirit to detect motives, atmospheres, and timing. While others are reacting emotionally, she's responding spiritually. Discernment sharpens in quiet places. You cannot hear God clearly when your life is full of noise. That is why separation was necessary. Solitude trains the ear of the spirit. In stillness, He learns the difference between God's voice and her own thoughts. She begins to recognize conviction without condemnation. She knows when God is warning her, when he is redirecting her, and when he is simply asking her to wait. A discerning woman does not rush into decisions. She pauses, she prays, she watches. She understands that haste is often the enemy of wisdom. While others are eager to move, she is willing to stand still until heaven gives clarity. This patience is not passivity, it is discipline. It is strength under control. The enemy fears discernment because it exposes strategy. He thrives in confusion, distraction, and emotional reactions. But a woman who walks closely with God can sense a setup before it reaches her door. She may not always explain what feels off, but her spirit recognizes misalignment immediately. She does not need proof to obey God's warning. Obedience is enough. Discernment protects her heart. She does not open her life to everyone who smiles at her. She understands that access is earned, not assumed. She measures character, not charisma. She listens beyond words. She observes patterns. And when God says no, she does not negotiate. This sensitivity also teaches her when to speak and when to remain silent. Not every battle requires confrontation. Not every truth needs to be announced. Some victories are won quietly. Discernment teaches her that silence is sometimes strategy. While others explain themselves, she trusts God to reveal truth in time. A chosen woman with discernment does not confuse opportunity with assignment. Every open door is not hers to walk through. Some doors are distractions designed to pull her off course. Discernment teaches her to ask not just, can I, but should I? She understands that saying yes to the wrong thing will cost her peace. This spiritual perception also anchors her during uncertainty. When ennui, ours are delayed, she does not panic. When direction seems unclear, she leans into prayer. She knows that God is not silent without reason. Sometimes silence is protection. Sometimes waiting is preparation. Discernment grows stronger through obedience. Each time she listens and responds correctly, her sensitivity increases. Each time she ignores God's prompting, confusion follows. So she learns to trust the nudge, the check in her spirit, the quiet warning that doesn't make sense logically but feels right spiritually. A discerning woman understands timing. She knows that being early can be as dangerous as being late. She waits for God's green light. She does not force doors open. She does not manipulate outcomes. She trusts that what is truly from God will unfold without compromise. This mark makes her dangerous to the enemy. He cannot deceive her easily. He cannot distract her for long. He cannot rush her into regret. She sees through fog. She recognizes traps. She senses when something carries a hidden cost. Discernment does not make her fearful. It makes her free. Free from manipulation. Free from pressure. Free from confusion. She walks with clarity because she listens before she moves. The chosen woman understands this truth. It is better to walk alone with discernment than to walk with a crowd in confusion. And because she sees clearly, she moves confidently. One of the undeniable marks of a chosen woman is her capacity to endure fire. Not the kind of fire that warms, but the kind that threatens to consume. The kind that exposes weakness, tests faith, and strips away every false source of strength. A chosen woman is not exempt from hardship. If anything, she encounters it more frequently. Not because she is weak, but because she is trusted. Fire is never sent to destroy what God has chosen. It is sent to refine it. The same flames that burn others are used by God to purify his daughters. What the enemy intends to silence her voice becomes the very thing that gives her authority. She doesn't come out of the fire untouched. She comes out transformed. A chosen woman knows pain intimately. She knows betrayal that cut deep. She knows disappointment that lingered. She knows seasons where prayers felt unanswered and nights where tears were the only language she had left. She knows what it feels like to keep showing up when no one is clapping, to keep believing when evidence is missing, to keep worshiping when heaven feels quiet. But the fire did not break her. It built her. Endurance is not the absence of pain. It is the decision to remain faithful in the presence of it. A chosen woman learns how to breathe in the heat. She learns how to stand when everything inside her wants to collapse. She learns how to trust God even when the outcome is unclear. This kind of strength cannot be taught. It must be lived. God does not stand outside the fire watching. He steps into it with her. Just as he stood with the Hebrew boys in the furnace, he stands beside his daughters in their trials. That is the difference. The fire may rage, but she is not alone. The flames may rise, but they cannot consume what God protects. The enemy often miscalculates here. He assumes the fire will finish her. He assumes pressure will cause her to quit. He assumes loss will lead to bitterness. But what he does not understand is that fire reveals what is real. And when a woman is chosen, the fire only exposes the strength God placed inside her. She carries scars, but they do not speak of defeat. They speak of survival. Each scar tells a story of grace that intervened when strength failed, of peace that guarded her mind when fear tried to take over, of faith that remained when everything else fell apart. She does not hide her scars. She honors them because they testy. Tied to God's faithfulness, a chosen woman does not panic under pressure. She remembers. She remembers the last fire and the one before that and the one she thought would end her but didn't. Memory becomes her weapon. Experience becomes her confidence. She knows that if God brought her through before, he will do it again. Fire matures her. It teaches her patience when answers delay. It teaches her forgiveness when wounds are deep. It teaches her humility when pride would be easier. The fire strips away entitlement and replaces it with endurance. She no longer crumbles when things go wrong. She becomes steady. This endurance changes how she worships. Her praise is not performative. It is proven. When she lifts her hands, it is not out of habit. It is out of history. Her worship carries weight because it has been forged in suffering. Hell recognizes this kind of praise because it comes from a place the enemy hoped she would never escape. The chosen woman understands that fire is not permanent. It is seasonal. But what it produces is eternal. The strength she gains cannot be taken from her. The wisdom she carries cannot be stolen. The authority she walks in cannot be faked. She is no longer intimidated by trials. She respects them, but she does not fear them. She knows that pain has a purpose, and she refuses to waste what she has survived by returning to who she used to be. The fire did not destroy her identity. It clarified it. The fire did not silence her faith. It strengthened it. She walked through the furnace, and she came out carrying light. There is a difference between volume and authority. A chosen woman understands this distinction early. She does not need to announce herself to be recognized. She does not need a microphone to be heard. There is a weight to her presence that speaks before her words ever do. When she enters a room, atmospheres shift, not Bika. She demands attention, but because she carries alignment, spiritual authority is not loud. It is settled. It comes from submission, not self-promotion. A chosen woman walks with authority because she has learned how to surrender. She knows that power flows through obedience, not ambition. What she carries was not learned in public, it was formed in private. This authority develops through consistency with God. Long before others see her strength, God has tested her faithfulness. He has watched how she responds when no one is watching. He has measured her integrity when compromise was easier. He has observed her humility when recognition was absent. And because she passed unseen tests, she now carries visible weight. A woman with spiritual authority does not rush to defend herself. She does not panic when misunderstood. She trusts God to be her advocate. She understands that defending herself prematurely often delays divine vindication, so she stands firm, speaks truth when necessary, and rests when silence is required. Her authority is rooted in discernment. She knows when to engage and when to withdraw. She understands that not every battle is hers to fight. Some fights are distractions, some arguments are traps. She chooses peace without surrendering conviction. She chooses wisdom without abandoning courage. People may mistake her quietness for weakness, but silence is not absence of strength. It is control. It is confidence. It is restraint. The chosen woman has learned that authority does not need validation. It speaks for itself. This inner authority also shapes her boundaries. She no longer overextends herself to be accepted. She no longer sacrifices peace to maintain access. She understands that boundaries are not barriers, they are protection. What God is doing in her life is too valuable to expose to unnecessary strain. The chosen woman carries history. Why? God. That history gives her presence weight. When she prays, heaven listens, not because of eloquence, but because of relationship. Her words carry authority because her life carries alignment. She has walked through fire, and fire leaves residue of power. This presence is not intimidating. It is grounding. People feel safe around her because she does not manipulate. She does not compete. She does not posture. She stands secure. Her confidence invites others to breathe easier. Her peace becomes contagious. A woman with spiritual authority understands her position. She does not confuse dominance with leadership. She does not confuse control with influence. True authority does not overpower. It stabilizes. It creates order. It brings clarity. It establishes peace. God trusts this woman with responsibility because she will not misuse power. She will not exploit influence. She will not elevate herself at the expense of others. She understands that authority is stewardship. What God places in her hands is meant to build, not to dominate. This authority also guards her reactions. She does not respond impulsively. She responds intentionally. When offense presents itself, she pauses. When pressure increases, she prays. When confusion arises, she waits. She understands that reactions reveal immaturity, but responses reveal mastery. The chosen woman has learned that authority is not granted overnight. It is earned through obedience, endurance, and humility. God releases authority in layers, trusting her with more as she proves faithful with less. Each level requires deeper surrender. When she speaks, her words carry clarity. When she moves, her steps are ordered. When she stands firm. Her presence communicates stability because she is anchored in truth. She is not striving to be powerful. She is submitted to power. She is not demanding authority. She is walking in it. And when a chosen woman carries this kind of inner authority, heaven backs her steps and hell recognizes her voice. When a woman has truly been chosen by God, influence begins to follow her, not because she chased it, but because she aligned with heaven. Kingdom influence is not something she manufactures. It is something God releases. It does not depend on a platform, a title, or an audience. It flows naturally from obedience. A chosen woman understands that worldly influence seeks attention, but kingdom influence produces transformation. She is not concerned with being seen by people. She is committed to being trusted by God. Her life becomes a living sermon, and her obedience becomes her loudest message. She does not manipulate doors open. She prays them open. She does not compete for space. God creates space for her. What she carries cannot be copied because it was cultivated in secret. What flows through her cannot be faked because it was forged through faithfulness. When a chosen woman enters a room, atmospheres change, not because she dominates the space, but because she carries presence. Her words bring clarity. Her prayers shift environments. Her discernment exposes what needs to be addressed. People may not understand why they feel lighter after speaking with her, but heaven does. She does not need permission to lead. Leadership follows alignment. Authority follows obedience. God entrusts her with influence because she will not misuse it. She does not elevate herself. She elevates truth. She does not seek control. She seeks impact. This influence shows up in ordinary places, in her home, in her workplace, in conversations that seem insignificant. She understands that ministry does not require a microphone. Sometimes the most powerful moments happen in private, over a quiet prayer, a timely word, or a simple act of obedience. The chosen woman does not company invisibility with effectiveness. She understands that some of the most impactful work happens unseen. She's content sowing seeds she may never personally harvest. Her influence is generational. She is planting what others will one day reap. She does not use influence to inflate her ego. She uses it to free others. She speaks life where hopelessness has taken root. She brings light where darkness has settled. She carries solutions into spaces filled with confusion, not because she has all the answers, but because she knows the source. Kingdom influence does not announce itself. It is recognized. Doors open around her without explanation. Favor follows her quietly. Opportunities align without manipulation. This is not luck. It is alignment. God responds to obedience with access. A chosen woman understands that influence requires responsibility. She guards her heart. She guards her words. She guards her spirit. She knows that compromise erodes credibility. She chooses integrity even when shortcuts appear attractive. Her influence carries weight because it has been tested. God watched how she handled rejection, how she handled delay, how she handled disappointment. And because she remained faithful when no one was watching, God now trusts her when others are. She is not striving for recognition. She is secure in purpose. She understands that applause fades, but assignment endures. She does not need to be celebrated to remain faithful. Heaven's approval is enough. This influence is not aggressive. It is invitational. People are drawn to her because they sense safety, clarity, and peace. Her presence becomes a refuge. Her counsel becomes trusted. Her prayers become effective. A chosen woman understands this truth. Influence is not about how many follow you. It is about how many are changed because you obeyed. She is not chasing impact. She is living aligned, and impact is responding. One of the most misunderstood marks of a chosen woman is compassion. Many mistake compassion for softness without strength, but heaven knows better. Compassion is not weakness. It is power under control. It is the evidence that a woman has walked through pain and allowed God to redeem it rather than harden her heart. A chosen woman does not just sympathize with the broken, she recognizes them. She sees the tears behind the smile, the fatigue behind the strength, the silence behind the laughter, not because she is overly emotional, but because she has been there. Pain trained her eyes. Suffering sharpened her sensitivity. God used her wounds to give her vision. This compassion is not learned in comfort. It is forged in adversity. She knows what it feels like to be overlooked, misunderstood, and dismissed. She knows what it means to pray and wait, to hope and endure. And instead of becoming bitter, she allowed God to make her better. Her broken places became wells of mercy. A chosen woman does not rush people through healing. She does not minimize pain or offer shallow answers. She understands that some wounds require presence more than words. Sometimes the most spiritual thing she can do is sit, listen, and stay. Her presence becomes ministry. Her patience becomes healing. This compassion moves her to action. She prays for those who cannot pray for themselves. She stands in the gap when others step away. She gives without needing recognition. She serves without keeping score. Her love is not transactional. It is intentional. God trusts her with people because she will not exploit their pain. She will not weaponize their stories. She will not use their vulnerability to elevate herself. She covers, she protects, she restores. This is why heaven entrusts her with hearts. Compassion makes her dangerous to the enemy because every life she touches becomes a testimony in progress. The chosen woman understands that compassion requires boundaries. She does not carry burdens God never assigned her. She learns to love without losing herself. She understands that compassion flows best when it is anchored in wisdom. She helps without enabling. She supports without rescuing. She loves without controlling outcomes. Her compassion reflects the heart of Christ. Jesus was moved by compassion, and so is she. When she sees injustice, her heart aches. When she encounters brokenness, she responds. Not with judgment, but with grace. Not with condemnation, but with truth wrapped in love. This compassion draws people to her, not because she has all the answers, but because she listens without judgment. People feel safe around her. They feel seen. They feel valued. Her presence reminds them that God has not forgotten them. A chosen woman understands that compassion will cost her. It will require time, energy, and emotional investment. It will sometimes go unappreciated, but she does not serve for applause. She serves from obedience. She understands that heaven sees what people overlook. Her compassion is not performative. It is private. It shows up in unseen moments, late night prayers, quiet acts of kindness, silent intercession. She does not announce what she does. She allows God to multiply it. The enemy fears her compassion because love disarms hatred. Mercy dismantles bitterness. Grace breaks cycles. Compassion interrupts darkness in ways force never could. A compassionate woman carries the atmosphere of heaven into broken spaces. She does not look away from mess. She leans in. She does not step over the wounded to reach her goals. She stops for the one. She understands that purpose is not achieved by ignoring pain, but by allowing God to work through it. This mark shapes her legacy. She may never be celebrated publicly, but she will be remembered eternally. Heaven records every tear she wiped, every prayer she whispered, every moment she stayed when it would have been easier to leave. A chosen woman knows this truth. Strength without compassion becomes hardness. Authority without compassion becomes control. Influence without compassion becomes empty. But compassion, rooted in truth and guided by wisdom, becomes healing. She is not just strong. She is safe. And in a wounded world, that is powerful. One of the clearest signs that a woman has been chosen by God is her faith in seasons where nothing seems to be happening. Not faith that shouts when doors open, but faith that stands when heaven is silent. This kind of faith is not emotional. It is anchored. It does not depend on visible progress. It rests in promise. A chosen woman understands that silence does not mean absence. God does some of his deepest work when he says the least. While others panic in waiting seasons, she learns to trust the process. She does not confuse delay with denial. She knows that God's timing is never careless. It is precise. Waiting stretches faith. It exposes motives. It reveals whether a woman trusts God only for outcomes or for relationship. The chosen woman learns to worship without results, to pray without immediate answers, and to obey without applause. This is not easy faith. This is mature faith. Her faith does not collapse when plans fall apart. She understands that detours are often divine direction. When doors close, she does not assume failure. She asks for instruction. She knows that some closed doors are protection she will only understand later. This faith is not passive. It is active trust. She continues to live with integrity even when breakthrough seems distant. She continues to show up when recognition is absent. She continues to serve when reward is unseen. Waiting does not paralyze her. It purifies her A chosen woman learns how to move forward one step at a time. She does not need the full picture to obey. She trusts the next instruction. Faith teaches her that clarity comes through obedience, not before it. God reveals direction as she walks, not while she waits in fear. This faith also guards her emotions. She does not allow disappointment to turn into doubt. She feels frustration, but she does not live there. She acknowledges uncertainty, but she does not surrender to it. Her faith gives her emotional discipline. The enemy often attacks during waiting seasons. He whispers lies of insignificance, delay, and abandonment. But the chosen woman counters lies with truth. She remembers what God has already done. She recalls past victories. She rehearses faithfulness instead of fear. This kind of faith grows stronger through testing. Each season of waiting adds weight to her belief. She becomes steady, unshakable. When storms rise, she does not crumble. She stands firm because her faith is rooted deep. A chosen woman understands that faith is not pretending everything is fine. It is trusting God even when it is not. It is believing beyond what is visible. It is holding on when logic says let go. It is choosing hope when despair feels reasonable. Her faith influences others. People watch how she waits. They observe her patience. They notice her peace. Her quiet trust becomes testimony. Her consistency becomes evidence. Her faith speaks even when she says nothing. This faith also fuels prayer. She does not pray with desperation. She prays with expectation. She approaches God confidently, not because she deserves answers, but because she trusts his character. Her prayers carry authority because they are rooted in belief. A chosen woman knows that faith without action is incomplete. So she moves when God says move. She waits when God says wait. She releases when God asks. Eyes let go. Obedience becomes her language of trust. Waiting seasons do not weaken her. They mature her. They teach her endurance. They deepen her dependence. They refine her expectations. By the time the door opens, she is ready to walk through it with wisdom. She understands this truth. Faith is not proven when everything is clear. Faith is revealed when everything is quiet. And because her faith has been tested in silence, it will stand strong when fulfillment arrives. When all the marks of a chosen woman come together, something unmistakable happens. Her life begins to speak with clarity. Not perfection, but alignment. Not noise, but authority. The separation, the identity, the discernment, the endurance, the authority, the influence, the compassion, and the faith all merge into one consistent witness. She is no longer fragmented. She is focused. A chosen woman does not carry these marks in isolation. They work together. Separation trained her to hear God. Identity anchored her when storms came. Discernment protected her from deception. Fire refined her character. Authority stabilized her presence. Influence extended her reach. Compassion softened her strength. Faith sustained her when answers delayed. Each mark prepared her for the next. This is why her life looks different. She responds differently. She walks differently. She loves differently. She no longer reacts out of insecurity. She responds out of alignment. She is not easily shaken because she is deeply rooted. She is not easily distracted because she is clearly assigned. The chosen woman understands that God did not mark her for comfort. He marked her for impact. But impact is never released before maturity. God waits until her character can sustain what her calling demands. That is why the process was long. That is why the pruning was painful. That is why the waiting felt heavy. Heaven was preparing a vessel that would not break under pressure. She no longer measures success by speed. She measures it by obedience. She understands that delayed obedience costs peace, but delayed reward builds endurance. She trusts God's timing because she has seen his faithfulness too many times to doubt him now. This integration produces consistency. She is the same in public and in private. She is the same in abundance and in lack. She does not shift with trends. She does not compromise with pressure. Her yes remains yes. Her no remains no. Integrity has become her identity. The chosen woman understands that her calling is not about elevation alone. It is about representation. She represents the kingdom wherever she goes, in how she speaks, in how she listens, in how she forgives, in how she waits, in how she stands firm without becoming hard. This alignment brings peace, not because life is easy, but because she trusts God deeply. She no longer strives for control. She surrenders outcomes. She knows that obedience is her responsibility, but results belong to God. Her life becomes a signal to others, not a performance, but a testimony. People watch her endure and find hope. They watch her wait and find courage. They watch her forgive and find freedom. Her life invites others into alignment without her needing to say a word. A chosen woman understands that everything she survived was necessary. Nothing was wasted. No tear was ignored. No prayer was unheard. No season was pointless. God used it all. The fire refined her. The silence trained her. The delay strengthened her. She no longer asks why the process was so hard. She understands now. What she carries requires depth. What she releases requires authority. What she builds requires endurance. God was preparing her to carry weight without collapsing. This is why she walks confidently but humbly, boldly but gently, firmly but compass, silently. She knows the cost of her calling, and she carries it with reverence. She is not chasing purpose anymore. She is walking in it. She is not seeking approval. She is anchored in obedience. She is not afraid of the future. She is prepared for it. This is the chosen woman, fully aligned, deeply rooted, and ready. Faith is the final thread that holds every mark together. When a woman has been chosen by God, faith becomes the engine that keeps her moving even when fulfillment feels distant. It is faith that turns pressure into purpose, delay into development, and trials into testimony. Without faith, separation would feel unbearable. Endurance would collapse, compassion would grow cold, and influence would lose its power. Faith anchors her when answers are silent and strengthens her when the journey is long. It reminds her that God's promises do not expire with time. This unshakable faith keeps her standing, believing, and advancing. It is the heartbeat of a chosen woman, the force that keeps her aligned, empowered, and victorious in every season.